but I like them. And I can see why they're popular, not just in real life, which I assume they are, but to the liberal media, because they speak great English. They're very presentable. In other words, they're useful for propaganda, because that's not actually how most Syrian migrants to Canada are. Most Syrian migrants to Canada over the last 5 years don't speak English or French. They don't have any job skills. They're not successful. I like these folks, by the way. Who on earth would ever raise a word, let alone a death threat, against them? Well, here's the CBC state broadcaster to explain what happened. Toronto restaurant closes after death threats arise from relatives' involvement in Bernier protest. Heartbroken family behind Sufi says restaurant is shutting down for good. Let me read a bit. A Syrian family says it is shutting down its Toronto restaurant after receiving death threats a week after a relative was involved in a protest at a Maxime Bernier speaking event in Hamilton, where a senior was blocked from entering. And then they quote a little bit of that letter on Instagram that I read to you. And then they say, the family also released some of the racist and violent messages they have received. "You're going back in a box," read part of one message. "Keep it up, and your family and those who defend your family's terrorist actions will suffer immensely," reads another. Well, in case you need me to say it, I absolutely oppose death threats against anyone. I should tell you, I'm not a criminal lawyer, but these comments probably don't rise to the level necessary for a police prosecution. They lack the immediacy and specificity and credibility to meet the test beyond a reasonable doubt of a criminal death threat. But look, I oppose them anyways, even if they're not crimes. I get death threats from time to time too, usually in comments online. Very rarely do I report them to police, because most of the time it's obviously just trash talk. It's not imminent or real. But I'm against death threats, even those that don't quite rise to the criminal standard, whether against me or some restaurateurs. But what exactly is the CBC hinting at here? Or actually not hinting at? What are they obscuring? Let me read part again to you. We sure saw the words Maxime Bernier loud in the headline. Did Maxime Bernier make the death threat? I don't know, the CBC almost wants you to think so, putting his name in the headline. Is that really the headline here? Let me read one line from the story again to you. A relative was involved in a protest at a Maxime Bernier speaking event in Hamilton, where a senior was blocked from entering. Okay, so a relative. You mean the son of that mom and dad who works there? I guess a son is a relative. They're talking about this guy.
You learn who has tempers, who doesn't.
Who has a temper?
I'm not going to complain about my brother like he complained about me.
So that's the relative, the son who works there. I wonder why the CBC's dancing around that relative. Now, what did the CBC mean by that relative was involved in a protest? What was his involvement? Let me read that line again. Some protesters attempted to prevent people from entering the building, and one video, which was widely shared among Bernier supporters, shows several protesters blocking the path of 81-year-old Dorothy Martson and her husband. They were in a lineup and treating me like I'm a criminal, she said during an earlier interview. So that's how the CBC describes what happened that fateful day. Someone blocked this little old lady's path. No big deal, right? All right, well, here's the video. Would you describe this as blocking the path?
Off our streets! Nazis come! 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 Off our streets!
No, that's not blocking the path. That's screaming at an 81-year-old woman that she's a Nazi, screaming and blocking the path. There's no path. She was being blocked. Did you see that foot, the screamer there? And some thug wearing a mask, terrorist style. By the way, this wasn't just shared amongst Bernier supporters. As you can see, it was seen millions of times, but not on the CBC. I want to read that passage again. Some protesters attempted to prevent people from entering the building, and one video, which was widely shared among Bernier supporters, shows several protesters blocking the path of 81-year-old Dorothy Martson. Really? Watch that one more time.
Off Off our streets! Nazis come! 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 Off our streets! Nazis
Physically blocking an 81-year-old woman, blocking her walker, screaming at her that she's a Nazi, a thug wearing a mask. Did the CBC really tell you the truth there? The son of that Syrian couple, an employee of the restaurant, was wearing a mask. Now we know that. We know it was him because he's stupider than your average Antifa. They usually dress all in black. It's a tactic called the black bloc because that means it's harder to ID someone later. But you can see it's the same guy. It's the son. He wears that same orange shirt a lot. You can see his tattoo on his arm. Same guy. It's the son of that lovely couple. His name is Allah. If there's some thuggish riot around Toronto, he's there. He's there. He's on the streets. He's at that fight in a mall. Whatever. Allah al-Sufi is there. He's a rioter. He's with Antifa. He's literally wearing a mask as his colleagues screamed Nazi at a little old lady. That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show, which is a show I do every day. I do a monologue, interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at premium.rebelnews.com.